What is up, guys? Evan Aldo here. Enjoying a nice sunset. Another day is just about to be over in Miami. You know, we kind of look at, as you age and get older, they say every single, year, let's say, at least maybe even every single day goes by quicker than the previous. And the reason for that, I believe, it's not, I didn't come up with this, it's from what I heard, is that the longer you live, the more perspective kind of you have. So it doesn't feel like as long. Like when you're 10 years old, a year feels a lot longer back then because you only have, 10 of them. You know what I mean? You only have so many of them. There's only so many of them. But as you get to, 27 like me, the perspective kind of changes and it goes by, a lot faster. And I think that's the importance of, life is a race. I would argue, a lot of people would agree with this. Life is really a race because, I talk to a lot of people and, a lot of people are millionaires, but they're in their 60s, their 70s or whatever, you know what I mean? And you got to compare it. Everything's relative. It's a lot more impressive to be in a Lambo. Nobody cares about the 60-year-old in the Lambo. They care about the 20-year-old in the Lambo. And the other thing in terms of perspective on, on life and how quickly things go by is you got to look at it like this. I mean, when you're 20 years old, you're halfway to 40. When you're 25, you're halfway to 50. I'm 27, so I can't even do basic math here. I'm halfway to 64, I believe. Is that what it is? Yeah, I'm halfway to 64, or is it 54? Yeah, I'm halfway to 54. Wow, I sound dumb, but man, when you're not using kind of that basic math, I used to be so good at basic math. When you don't use something, it really goes away. I will say that it really goes away when you stop using something. It really, it doesn't stay with you. It definitely doesn't stay with you. A language, anything, it's kind of, nothing really lasts. Nothing lasts forever. That's the thing. Nothing really lasts forever. Good things and bad things. I mean, it's pretty rare something stays completely constant for, things can stay constant for a while, but it's rare, I would say, that things stay constant for more than a few years. Look at these boats, I could just sit. You take it for granted, I take it for granted, but all I see is, especially on weekends, all day, just boats, crossing, the bridge goes up, yachts. No big yachts right now, but you know how it is. But, it is a very, it's been a fun life too. I mean, the things, I think about a lot how the biggest trap we fall into a lot is like caring too much about what other people think and kind of taking the advice of others because, no one size fits all. What worked for somebody else isn't automatically going to work for you. And, a lot of the biggest things I did that led to the most success I had were pretty different from what the norm was, pretty different from what everybody around me, kind of told me to do. And I think that, in the book, The Magic of Thinking Big, they talk about, how you shouldn't trust your own instincts a little bit more. I remember a lot of times I screwed up because I thought somebody else was like a lot smarter than me. So I did what they said to do when I kind of had second thoughts about it, and it kind of messed. In the long term, it didn't work out. It didn't work out too well. So I think that's, ultimately a really important thing to kind of think about here. Another thing too, like I mentioned, everything's a race. You have less time than you think you have, and even if you have more time than you think you have, even if you have all the time in the world, you still should be, what's the word I'm looking for? Have a sense of urgency. You still should have a sense of urgency, And I feel like a lot, the big thing too is like in our modern day, especially, all of the world, but especially if you live in if you're eating the standard American diet, I'm willing to bet if you're eating the standard American diet, you're a little, you may be get some brain fog once in a while. You may have a lack of energy. Maybe look into some different things, lower that intake of carbs. A lot of people talk about the carnivore diet, they talk about keto, they talk about all these things. I don't know what's right or what's wrong. You know, the animal-based diet, carnivore MD, I don't know exactly what's right or what's wrong. I don't know if anybody really does. But what I do know is you can mess with these things and they can lessen your anxiety, increase your energy, increase your productivity by a decent amount. Now, I'm not saying that's gonna, make you get successful in 3 months or 6 months, but it could absolutely lead to that. It could lead to that. You learn a lot of different things. I was watching a documentary on Amazon Prime about fasting. That was pretty interesting. Some people had really life-changing, more like recovering from bad kind of medical conditions from just fasting. Obviously, you have to know what the hell you're doing. Be careful with that. Don't hurt yourself or starve to death. Obviously, but I have no experience with that. This isn't any. I just found the documentary interesting. I don't know what it was called. It was on Amazon Prime though. But there's a lot of things to kind of look into. A lot of things to try and look into. And I mean, as you kind of get older, as you get older and you fall into maybe you got a mortgage payment, you got house payments, you got a wife and kids. There's a lot of things where it could get tougher to have the time to kind of do these things, but you have to kind of make the time. I think that's really important. And no matter where you are, a lot of people, they blame these factors on why they couldn't be successful. Oh, it's because I have kids. Oh, this, that, you know what I mean? It's most of the time it's just excuse. Most of the time, if they didn't have the problem that they had, they would probably find a different problem to use as an excuse, something else to use as an excuse. So that's what we got to really think about here. And, one of the things I was thinking about quite a bit, like almost forgetting about what it was in this, train of thought right now. But, yeah. So, when you get that business, the dream that, well, it depends who you talk to. That's the thing too, before I even get to that point, no, there is no one size fits all. One man's treasure is another man's trash a lot of times. Sometimes you can get I was getting all if you watch, for example, if you watch a lot of, I don't know, digital nomad content on YouTube, you're going to think that the best thing that everybody wants to do is move to Bali or move to Thailand and be a digital nomad and all those type of things. And then, you talk to some other people and they don't want anything to do with that they have no interest in that whatsoever. They think they just don't want to do that. They're not necessarily, don't think it's dangerous necessarily or a bad idea. They just don't want to do that. They're comfortable with where they are, and there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But that's the thing too. Sometimes especially with all the different media sources, you could find anything that kind of agrees with your individual viewpoints today, and it may feel like everybody in the world kind of wants that same thing when a lot of people don't want what you want. I remember when I was watching the documentary The Secret. It's a law of attraction documentary. Bob Proctor's in a lot of it's interesting. It's got criticism and all that, but I remember, I think it was Bob Proctor said not everybody wants a Ferrari, not everybody wants, you know what I mean? They're asking oh, and not everybody could have a Ferrari. And it's the point is no, not everybody wants that, you know what I mean? For certain people, they want to live in downtown Miami. Well, I'd say there's 3 different points. Certain people, they would love living. A lot of people, let's say, would like living here. Some people wouldn't really. I got those police boats. Some people wouldn't like living here at all. They wouldn't like the culture of it. I mean, there are things that are viable, reasons why you would not want to live in Miami. I'll give you that. There are viable, logical reasons why living in Miami may not be the best place. It's expensive as hell. There's even many other reasons other than just the cost. But there's other people that love all the things of that, and then there's a lot of people who are in the middle too. There's a lot of people that are kind of indifferent on it. They like certain aspects, they don't like other aspects. I think that's how kind of most people are on certain things. There's no kind of one. Most people are kind of moderate too. We've got politics really. It seems like everybody's kind of at ends, and it's getting more and more to that way. But historically, most people have been more moderate. Kind of more in the middle. Sometimes you look at the media too much, it seems like it's all violence and chaos and everybody's going crazy and all this stuff, and you're going to get in trouble for making eye contact with the wrong person. It's really, you go out in public, it's really usually not like that. It sometimes can be like that, but it's very rare. I'd say it's getting worse in some instances. it depends, but you know, that's what I would say. Like it's really not as bad as what it's like made out to be sometimes. And changing the subject a little bit, going back to the sense of urgency, doing the things you want to do. You want to find ultimately the lifestyle that you want to live, and you want to kind of experience that before you even try to pursue it a little bit, because it doesn't take that much money to, even if you wanted to, let's say, just have a Lamborghini, it doesn't take that much money to rent it for a day. What, $2,000 the most, maybe less, you know what I mean? You could rent it and try it out and just see if that's something you really want. You could probably even rent a Rolex for that matter. I don't know how that would work, but wear that around. See who notices it. Realize, you test out the Rolex. See what you could get out of that. Experience that lifestyle. Maybe you want to move to Thailand. Take a trip there. You know what I mean? Maybe you want to move to Bali. Take a trip there first. See how you like it. See how you like it. I think that's an important thing to just kind of realize here. See how you like it. So, yeah, I think that's an important thing to realize. And, you look at like success, you look at our lives, you look at, I think for most people, the biggest problem probably is money, it seems like, in terms, but I could be wrong in this, but it seems like it's like lack of resources. It seems like lack of money seems to be the biggest issue. And then when you make the money, there becomes more and more, kind of issues. A lot of people kind of let it get into their head. They think they're special. They think they're great. And those things are kind of what gave them the money in the first place. But you got to realize part of it. But you got to realize that, you're not invincible. You still got to follow. There's a lot of famous people that went down for kind of thinking they could get away with stuff. Look at SPF. That's a good example. Probably the medication he was taking. There's a lot of contributors, but damn, that music on that yacht is loud. But a lot of contributing factors. But you get, you become that billionaire. You become that multimillionaire. You become that or just that millionaire, just worth a 500 grand. worth 100 grand, let's say even. You think you're invincible. You think you're ahead of everybody else, and maybe you are smarter than everybody. Maybe you are, but you got to realize that you got to be careful, and you still could end up in trouble. And there's a whole new set of problems that does happen once you kind of get the wealth, and that's, I think, a lot of Eastern trains going by. A lot of Eastern religions talk about that more, like Buddhism, a lot of things like that. And you look at kind of, the East, people have less resources, obviously, overall in the East. It's less wealthy, but I would say overall they're happier. People are not on all these pharmaceutical drugs, SSRIs, anti-anxiety medication. They're on that less. So, I ultimately think that, it's important to kind of realize these things. I'm not saying it's better, you're going to find a new set of problems with everything, but I think the Eastern religions kind of understand that more than the Western religions. You could also talk about how the Western religions are kind of dead. Christianity, it's not really that alive, not really followed, at least, in Andrew Tate talked about that. That was kind of like, where it was, that's the only enforced religion really anymore is more like Islam, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot different. But you look at that factor, and then you look at the East, and there's, you should experience a lot of different things, especially when you're young. And I feel like when you're young, that's more, because I feel like a lot of people, like, they'll make, let's say you make that 10 grand, you save that up. A lot of people blow that on going out to the bars, partying, smoking pot, doing drugs. They'll take girls out and stuff, and it never really leads to any, you know what I mean. They're spending it on stuff that's not really, they're spending it on things that's not an experience that you really have to spend money on. Once you went to a bar once, you know how it is. Once you went to a nice restaurant once, you know how it is. But there's certain things that they could spend that money on that would have been a lot more life-changing, a lot more fulfilling, such as traveling the world. Now, that may not be for everyone, but that's one thing I'm kind of wish I even did earlier. I did that when I was pretty young. The first time I studied abroad in Europe. That was more, I was in Italy. That was more very, very, you're in the West, so it was cool. You saw the culture, the food was very good, but it wasn't like a really life-changing experience. It wasn't that the experience I had. The first time I went to Mexico, I was 25. It was about 2 years ago. That was an incredible experience. I went to Thailand when I was, I think, like 20, with one of my friends 7 years ago now. Wow. I was just there again, but I mean, 7 years later, but I think it was 7 years later. Pretty sure, yeah, 6 or 7 years later. I think it was in 2018 I went, but that doesn't matter. But yeah, that was a little bit more kind of life-changing too. I mean, sometimes when you're solo traveling, it's a little bit more, maybe you could get more out of it because you could kind of, a lot of people, that's the other trap too. A lot of people, they go all the way to these places, and all they do is just drink and party. I'm like, you could have done that anywhere. You could have done that in America. You could have done that probably in the town your parents live in, town your grandparents live in. You know what I mean? You could have done, you could have done that anywhere. There's not really much you got. What did you get out of that? You know what I mean? That's what you got to really think about. That's what you really got to think about. A lot of it is kind of, connecting and learning more about yourself. Meditation retreats, things of that nature can be, life-changing. Can definitely be life-changing. There's quite a few. I mean, it's what you make of it. It's all of these things. Like, there's no one size fits all. Like, they affect people differently. They affect people very differently. Somebody could do a meditation retreat. It could be life-changing. Another person could get nothing out of it. They could hate it. You know what I mean? It could be, somebody could go to Thailand, hate it. Somebody could go to Thailand, love it, life-changing. It's ultimately, there's no one size fits all. And that's what I was getting back to, the Law of Attraction, the documentary, A Secret. Not everybody wants that Ferrari. A lot of people, I mean, I guess you could say it's like kind of cope, like certain people who can't afford it would always say, like, I don't want that, you know what I mean? But I think there's something to be said about, wanting a more, I don't want to say a simpler life, but just a different life, a life where you're not constantly trying to you compete against the Jonases. And, this is a lot of stuff I read when I first kind of graduated college. It was kind of crazy too, because there's a lot of stuff on the internet that I read when, I'm not getting all conspiratorial, but there's a lot of stuff, like good content on the internet that I read that is no longer there. Like, there were the people, and the only time I've ever heard somebody like mentioned talking about things that were just so obscure and controversial that not really controversial, just really obscure, that the blogger like deleted all his stuff. He's not even, he's not even one of the people I used to read, which I kind of learned. I definitely did not agree with him on everything. I don't think he was really the best person per se, but there were a lot of things I did kind of learn from him. A lot of things I did kind of learn from him. Look at this sunset. It is just incredible. Check out this sunset. That is incredible. It probably looks better for me than you, but yeah. And I remember this, I was kind of learning about that. You don't want to kind of keep up with the Jonases and all that. And I think this guy I used to watch, he took down all his stuff. I'm not going to tell you who he is. He was too controversial, but you can't even find his stuff anymore, and I don't have a copy of it. It would be very hard to find even. That's what's crazy too. And I don't think the people, the big corporations are, I don't know if I want to go that conspiratorial right now, but I don't think the big people in power even want people to read them. But I mean, stuff he said is not stuff that's you can't still find. But I don't know, just the way he talked about it was really good. And he talked about, how you don't want to, everybody, you're kind of in that trap, you know what I mean? You get that mortgage, everybody's trying to chase that better car. And the thing too is, like, I was kind of indifferent on it because it's kind of like the same thing. It's kind of like, it's like the same people that disagree that you should start a business that say you should just stick to the 9 to 5 and, put money in your 401k and all that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it was kind of like that. I was like, well, buying a nice house and a nice car, that you could do that if you make a lot of money, you know what I mean? So I guess, I don't know. It's kind of the view of, like, should you fake it till you make it? Should you not? I don't know. There's definitely different kind of viewpoints on it. I think, the thing, if you're going to take risks on things, if you're going to take risks and go into debt for something, it better be something that you're really freaking passionate about, and it better be something that that you're going to at least enjoy it. Because I feel like there's people that take out debt. Like, this is a good example. There's people that take out debt to go to college, and they didn't even enjoy going to the college. They don't even have a degree in something they are passionate about. They just went because they were kind of pressured and their friends were going, or, whatever reason. But like, if it's something that you're really not enjoying, then you sure as hell should not be taking out debt to do it. Like, but if it's something you're really passionate about, let's say maybe you really want this degree that typically most people fail at, don't make much money in college, but you're really, 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 really passionate about it. That could be something that you'll, even if you go into debt and you can't pay it off right away, even if you can't get a job in it, at least you had a lot of fun and you probably got something out of it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the difference. Like, I feel like a lot of people, like, they'll kind of buy this house in this area that's supposed to be, it's just a little good or whatever, but they don't even really enjoy living there. They may marry somebody even. You may marry somebody, not you, but, people in general may marry somebody and have kids just because that's the societal point that they're at in their life where it looks, where you're just trying to fit in and they don't even really want to, or maybe if you're in doubt about it, you probably shouldn't do it. That's what I will say. If you're in doubt about it, like I look the other, like try something. You want to take risks and do things towards things that you're really freaking excited about. Like, let's say you really, really, really want to travel the world and do a trip to Southeast Asia or something. It's just an example. Or maybe it's just a trip to, I don't know, who knows, Central America or Mexico or something. And you don't really have the money to do it. You use some credit cards to do it and you go, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in debt. But it was something that you were really passionate about and you really wanted to do, and you're going to freaking get something out of it, then it could be worth it. Then you get into the point where you don't know how many years you have left. You don't know how much time you have left. You might as well do it. That's where it kind of gets into that point. But people fall into the traps a lot of times, not always, but I would argue they fall into the traps a lot of times of doing things where, college example, going into a career, even becoming a doctor or a lawyer, I feel like a lot of them, they have no passion for the job. They don't like the job. And, I'll say I've worked for a law firm. I know a lot of doctors. I mean, I would never see myself doing those types of jobs in the way they do it. You know what I mean? Like, I remember when I got my degree in broadcast journalism and political science. And I had, I was almost going to become like a broadcast, a TV news reporter or a news anchor, that. And then I just started to realize when I was interviewing for these companies, like, this is so outdated. Like, this is so back. Like, this is not, like, these people are living in the last century still. The last maybe not the last century, but like the future is YouTube and internet and crypto and other shit. I mean, it's not, it's not like, it just seems so Stone Age to me. And I just went by my gut instinct and I didn't do it. I mean, this may also sound arrogant, but I felt like I was, I mean, I don't know if saying this is you got to be careful saying this, but I just felt like I was more capable of what all these other people going into that field were capable of. I felt like I had a good shot. I mean, you don't want to tell people this and brag to people this, that you're better than them. I think, a lot of people could have done what I did potentially if they had passion for it and really wanted to do it, obviously. But I feel like the people, like, I would say too, they didn't have the self-esteem. They weren't able or chose not to think as big as I did back then. I chose to think a lot bigger, I chose to think a lot bigger. And I mean, you got to be careful with that. Like, you don't want to be, because it always, like, I would tell you, almost every single time I've ever seen, somebody be really arrogant and talk really high of themselves and all that, it always comes back to, like, bite them. You know, everything. Even for example, like I knew somebody back in. This is just it's a true example. It's kind of funny. I knew somebody back in 2015 and 2016. All this guy would say is like, Hillary Clinton's gonna win. I know she's gonna win. I don't have to vote for Hillary Clinton. She's gonna win anyway. Hillary Clinton's gonna win. What happens? Trump wins. You know, it's like I feel like whenever somebody keeps repeating the same crap like that, like they always get it wrong. That's always what I've seen. First. You know, they always, a lot of the people too who are really arrogant, you know, for example, like in high school, even in college, you know, they thought so highly of themselves, all that. I would say you want to think very highly of yourself, have high self-esteem, but don't be like a braggart about it. Like you want to kind of keep it to yourself. And I think that's what, when you do find out, because they had success, the success gets to you. You know, you see a lot of these, you know, when people even get a little, you know, influencer following. Being an influencer is a big thing, especially girls. They get like a little following or something. Well, maybe not a little following, a little bit bigger. Maybe, I don't know. You know, it's a significant following. They got all these guys messaging them. You know what I mean? They got all this stuff going on. You know, they're on top of the world, and it lets them kind of get to their head. And then what happens? They decline. Maybe they gain weight. They're not as attractive as they were when they were younger. You know, you're not. Nothing lasts forever, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. The reason it's a good thing is because if you're in a really dark place, if things are going god awful, you could come out of that. That's the good part of that. And the bad, I guess the bad part of it is things are going really well, they may not continue as well. But I think when I always had some success, I would kind of get fearful a little bit. Maybe you could just say I had anxiety. I would kind of get fearful, like, oh, I had some success. Now what's going to happen? Geez, probably something bad's going to happen. It's not possible. You know, look at people around you. You're more successful than them. Something's going to happen. You're going to, you know, end up back where you started or whatever. You know what I mean? But what the hell was I going to say? But you know, at the same time, I like to look at like really successful people. Like people laugh at this example, but it's like there's a lot of these. But I mean, I don't know. And I think like Tom Brady. Like sure, he's had like some ups and downs, lost Super Bowls. You know, some minor bad things are happening. Tore his ACL. I mean, I would argue that's not even that bad of an injury compared to like some shit that happens to people. You know what I mean? Like that's not that. Like he was out for his season, but like an ACL tear. Like I feel like it's not even the most painful. You know, his most painful injury compared to like some things people go through in sports, obviously a sport like that, but you could have a generally, you know, good existence and generally succeed. You may have some setbacks, things may not go your way always, but you generally can succeed, and you have to believe that, and you have to, you know, I guess be humble about it. And that's the thing too. I think that in '07, this is another example. I don't know who said, when the Patriots were 18, they had no losses, perfect regular season. We're about to beat the Giants. They're about to win the Super Bowl against the Giants. You know, before that Super Bowl, they were really arrogant. I think even Brady said, we'll keep them below this amount of points or whatever. Or somebody said they were just very arrogant and thought they had it in the bag. What happens? The Giants beat you. That's always what freaking happens. Always. Like whenever one side always really thinks they have it in the bag, I don't know, some forces in the world happen where the underdog, you know, kind of pulls through. Some weird kind of forces happen like that. And then obviously the second time against the Giants, they lost too. It's a sports example. I'm not even the biggest sports fan. It's just one example that comes to mind. If you grew up in New England, especially, you know, especially if you're, you know, in your mid to late 20s, you grew up seeing Tom Brady, you know, be that star and all that. So it's something you were kind of exposed to. And that was kind of the fun part, I guess, because the winters were dark up there, man. Like the winters were bleak. Like it was cold. Like you needed something to root for, something to kind of follow. And I guess football was kind of that cool thing. I didn't play football in high school, but I mean it was kind of that cool thing to kind of watch, especially like I went to University of Miami for college, but even when I would come back and like visit for the, you know, month we had off. That's the thing too about college. Like it's so they do it in such a way where it's like I feel like it's just such a business of college, because like, you know, they do it in such a way like you get a lot of time off and all this shit, and like you get to go home for that month. Like they do it so people will stay. Like they make it so even if you don't like it, it's not that hard to leave typically. That's what they kind of do. Like they kind of do it in that way. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or whatever, but I'm saying like, if it's something that you're really not like wanting to do, and you have like better, if you have something that excites you more, that's what I think. Even if it's risky, something that excites you more, where like that's what I was talking about. Like if it's something that excites you, if it's something that, even if it's risky, even if you may not succeed, but you know you'll get something out of it, or at least, you know, have an amazing memory, or at least be 90 something percent sure that you will, then I think it's very kind of worth it to do it. That's the thing there. I mean, you want to be careful kind of with ego as well. You know, for the examples I stated, you know, it always seems to, you know, you kind of always could jinx things a lot there. You know, it's a lot of times what Elon Musk talked about, like the most ironic outcome is the most probable. Sometimes it does happen, like a lot of ironic, you know. That's why the thing too, like don't take life too seriously. You definitely have to laugh a lot. Like just, you know, most of that is just a funny thing, because if you look, sometimes I look back at like all the things I've experienced, and like some of them are you know, even if you take the show like Curb Your Enthusiasm, for example, Larry David, like a lot of those things that happened in the show, I'm sure it's highly exaggerated, but a lot of those things probably did happen to him. I think he said like a lot, and I look at things that happened in my life and I could put together a lot of like crazy stuff that's just hilarious. I look back, I laugh about it. I'm like, wow, I can't believe that happened. But at the same time, you got to be careful. You know, don't do anything stupid. Don't take risks. Don't do anything that's going to harm your body or harm your mind. You know, you got to take risks within reason, but you know, have fun. You know, don't take things too serious. And I think that fun too kind of gives you the energy and lets you kind of get into that positive vibration. The last thing, you know, the thing I guess I've had the biggest trouble with kind of with getting what I want, law of attraction, all that is kind of people say like, you got to get on that frequency. That's what I've kind of had trouble on, you know, those positive thoughts to get on that frequency. And sometimes it's hard if you're really programmed to believe it's not possible, believe you're destined to be where you are right now forever kind of. But you got to kind of just keep thinking and keep, you know, you got to stick with things, you know, give things a chance too, because we're so ADD now with all short form content. You know, we're so ADD a lot of times. You got to really give things a week, give things a month, even 6 months, you know, give things some time. I think I was too wanting too much instant gratification. That kind of screwed me up a lot of times. Anyway, guys, went on 31 minutes. If you enjoyed the video, please smash the like button. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.